Dear viewers, we have been joined by our final guest for this evening, who is Richa Elangovan, the graphic designer and illustrator. Welcome to Hala Kuwait, Richa.
Thank you for having me back on the show again.
Thank you for being here. So today we're going to be talking about graphic design. I think most of us know what it is, but can you just refresh our memories?
So graphic design, if I could use a quote, it would basically be a solution to a problem. So it's basically like a problem-solving technique. It uses colors, layouts, text, and composition to create a piece that could connect with the viewer.
Right. And I think that brings us right to communication. What is the connection or the importance of communication in graphic design?
So design could also be called communication design. So it's a very crucial part of graphic design. So it's basically, if I could put it in my words, it would be a good design is a piece that connects to the viewer.
Yes.
It is a piece that basically connects, and the whole point of design is to communicate to the audience. So a good design is something that has delivered its communication well.
Definitely, and a lot of the times we can just see something that's designed and we get the message right away, sometimes without even the use of any words or paragraphs. So
yes.
What is the difference between 2D and 3D? I think I personally know what 3D is, but it gets a bit confusing.
Yes, of course. So 2D design is basically a flat piece of work. If I could put in simple terms, it's like when you're drawing on a paper. So it has height and length, but doesn't have depth. So there's no angles to it. It's as you see it. 3D design, on the other hand, is something that has height, depth, and length. So it has angles to it. So you can see it from different perspectives. And I think that's what gives it the realistic view.
For sure. And I think it really does take a lot of time and effort to create a final design, and I know it's definitely a process. What is the exact process that we have to go through to design something?
So I think it differs from artist to artist, but if I would speak for my personal process, I would start with basically understanding the design brief that's given to me.
Yes.
So going over that, and then while I've understood what requires, I would go to my most favorite part of the step, which is research. So I would research into the market, and then research into existing work, and research for inspiration. So that could come from the internet, magazines, or a billboard you come across on the street.
Yes.
So after the research process is done, I would move to the experimenting part. So this is where I sketch out ideas.
Yeah.
And basically all the research comes onto the paper. I then develop it by shortlisting to 2 or 3 designs, and then I refine it to create the final product. So this would be the basic steps.
So it does differ definitely from an artist to an artist, and of course the amount of work maybe that the client is asking for, right?
Yes.
Definitely. So what about the various departments when it comes to graphic design? Can you tell us a bit about it?
So graphic design has a lot of like subunits, if you could call it, but I will talk about the main 4s that you'll probably be seeing a lot. So the first one is brand identity. So that includes branding. So it's like logo designs, letterheads, ads, or business cards. Then you have packaging design. So that's basically all the packaging that you see on products. Then there's web and mobile design. And then there's also print design. So that's like magazines, brochures, even merchandise or leaflets.
Okay, definitely. So all of these things do fall under the umbrella of graphic design. And what about typography? Does it influence people, or how does it influence people?
So typography, like by definition, just means appearance and style of text. So it's basically when text is used with design to communicate a message. So to give you an example, so like, for example, a newspaper. So the very first thing you notice in a newspaper is the headlines. So it's extremely bold, and it's probably the one with the largest text. The reason being is we want that to be the first thing the reader reads to grab their attention. So this is all included in hierarchy in design. So it's basically what grabs the attention of the viewer. And as we grab the attention, that's when they read and follow the article.
Right.
Another example, if I could give you, is probably logo design. So there's 2 kinds of logo designs. There's icons and text-based.
Okay.
So if you go to the text-based design, it's very minimal. So the reason being is the attention span of people are very short. So we tried to keep it short but memorable, but also something that we can remember in the long run.
Yes.
A very important or very well-known logo would be the McDonald's logo. If you just see the typography somewhere, someone will instantly know this belongs to this enterprise.
Definitely. I think logos are super important, and sometimes just the color or something similar to that logo reminds us of the original brand or logo.
Sure.
So I think a lot of attention should be put on it. But what is the difference between leading and tracking when it comes to typography?
So leading would be the space between two sentences. So leading is basically the space that you'll see between two lines. So
Yes.
you could either be far apart or closer together. That's leading. And tracking would be basically the overall space in a text passage. So it's a distance between the whole passage in general. That would be tracking.
Right. And I think you really tapped into branding, and I want to get into this a bit more. What is the importance of branding and even brand identity in the real world now?
So branding, I believe, exists in everyone's day-to-day life because we're all consumerists. So we purchase stuff. So everything that you purchase has a branding on it because it belongs to a business that makes it. And I think branding is very important because the first thing that we as humans do is we don't touch the product or taste it, we see it. That's the first sense that we use. So branding enables us to create a strategic plan for businesses to be different from each other. And we also need to connect to the audience. So I think branding uses like logo design, packaging, merchandising to connect to the audience. So I think it is extremely important for branding to be present for any business model.
Definitely. I think it's really important. And let's go a bit into the creative side of design. I know with anyone doing anything creative, it was designing graphics, clothes, anything, you do go through this block sometimes.
For sure.
How do you deal with that?
So like an artist's block, I feel like it differs from person to person. Like everyone reacts differently or has a different method to finding a new way.
Right, overcoming it.
So personally, like there's two things that I can think of that I do. Firstly, if I have a block for a certain piece, I would completely like leave that alone and then I'll go into a different activity.
Yes.
The reason being is you're also using a different part of your brain and you're not actually thinking about the work that's giving you the block. So hopefully when you come back, you'll have a different perspective and then you probably have a different idea of tackling the block itself. Another way is quite cliche, but I would just go on a walk. I would put my music on and then I'd just go for a very long walk, and as cliche as it sounds, it's probably like a breath of fresh air. And I come back and I probably see my piece in a different way. I probably have a different idea.
For sure.
So I think,
I think walks really do help, no matter how cliche it does sound, but sometimes we just need this kind of activity to really get out of the headspace that we are actually in. So when it comes to design, there's so many softwares to be used. Which do you prefer personally?
So the softwares that I use, I'm quite comfortable with the Adobe package. So Adobe has a variety of different softwares. So if I'm designing like a poster, for example, or something that's still, I would use Adobe Photoshop and Illustrator. These are common, like the baseline softwares that any artist could start off with.
Yes.
If I'm thinking of animating something, like 2D animation, for example, there's a software called Adobe Animate, which I think is quite great if anyone's looking into starting 2D animation. And as an illustrator, I also use Procreate. I think it's an amazing app. It's one of my favorites. And I think if you're looking into getting to illustration, that's a great app to start with. It's on the iPad.
Well, I think that's a great advice for anyone watching that wants to get into graphic design. So finally, why did you become a designer?
So I think I was always interested in art, and like I always knew I wanted to do something in art. So I was really fascinated with the idea of graphic design when it was introduced to me in high school. So it was really like interesting how I could use art to convey a message, but in the real world. So I thought that was a great path for me to take for the future. So I always just went on that path, and then I continued, and here I am.
That's amazing. I think it's always great to actually follow your passion and work with your passion if you can. Richa, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Dear viewers, we had with us Richa Elangovan, the graphic designer and illustrator. We're going to be viewing this report and we'll be right back.